focus on how do we create different incentives. And the system that we have built does not incent the right kind of market scouting and trying of innovative technology because the system doesn't feel like it's truly under threat.
Thinking about kind of enabling them to buy better, maybe buy smarter, how are we looking at like interoperability? So we avoid the problem where, three PEOs go to sometimes the same prime contractor, sometimes three different prime contractors, and we end up with platforms that can't communicate, that can't share information. And it's like a pre 9/11 commission sort of data sharing ontology. It's just on $1 billion platform instead of in an Intel community, right?
Yep.
How do we not do that? What does that look like? And where can folks, put effort and thinking around, right? Like, is it supporting Atlanta Council commissions like that? Is it the stuff like Jane Lee and the team are working on at Rebellion with the Software Defense Coalition, of which we were like one of the first 5 signatories here at Second Front? What does that look like? How do we start to not just get folks able to buy earlier and maybe buy smarter, but we sort of take that portfolio approach you're talking about and we take it below the logo and start thinking about like technical interoperability?
Yeah. So I love the data decree that Deputy Secretary Kath Hicks came out with. The question is, are we actually living up to those as a department? And I would argue I don't see enough of that being really adopted. And so, there's this really, so for those of you who are less familiar with them, it basically called for more openness and APIs, those kinds of interfaces, to help free the data from legacy systems and to promote more modular system architectures, right? So it's a great set of things. I had the great fortune of working on open data back in the Obama administration. And so I was around when we were, setting up the idea of chief data officers in federal government and this idea of interoperability and APIs and thinking about these things from the beginning of a system or a capability, right? Rather than, hey, at the end, because that was one of the challenges we had on the open data side was, hey, now we want to free some stuff, but we have PII mixed in and like, how are we going to make data available to the public, but we have to kind of go back and remediate a bunch of things. So if you can think about APIs and interoperability earlier in the R&D phase, and certainly, as things transition into programs, so that we're able to leverage the data from one system to another. I'll just tell you a quick story. I had the great privilege of traveling in the CENTCOM AOR. So General Kurilla invited 5 of us to basically tour the AOR, and it was great fun for me and eye-opening and humbling and awesome to see all these service members who I got to see in various places. So we were in Bahrain and Qatar and Iraq and Kuwait and so forth. And so just seeing the way things work in the field is so illuminating, and you could see that systems don't necessarily connect in an operations floor, and you have to have people kind of yelling over the operations floor or via chat or picking up the phone and calling to deconflict those kinds of things. And so we have kind of swivel interoperability. We have phone interoperability.
Good way to describe it. I like swivel interoperability.
We've got a lot of chat interoperability, right? So you could see. And look, there's some real value to that, right? You could see on an operations floor how they're using chat effectively. But you could also say, well, maybe some of this data could actually move from one system to another so that they don't have to speak it or type it in all the time, right? So the opportunities to tie systems together from the administrative to the targeting, you could see firsthand. And it was just a real honor to kind of go, into an AOR and spend time with folks. But it reinforced for me that, policy is not self-executing. Something we used to say back in the Obama White House is like, you can write the greatest executive order and all the agencies can slow walk and ignore it. So you better get the buy-in find the exemplars, figure out ways that you're going to organically amplify, great people and efforts, and use that as a way to drive policy. Because sometimes people are like, oh, well, we're going to write the policy and then the government's magically going to change. And it's like, well, they could also just ignore those words on the paper. And so back to those data decrees, I think those were great. And so I want to find ways to continue to drive those so that we are really freeing the data within the defense community, that we are letting programs try and buy technology in smaller pieces and being able to swap things that work and things that don't. And ultimately continuing to focus on commercial adoption. I think that's the thing that if I can kind of get on my soapbox for 2 seconds, is we kind of get into this difference between, let me give a bunch of requirements to the prime and have them build it, versus a commercial technology, which may come from a company that is focused on national security. It may have deep DoD DNA, and some of the CEOs or entrepreneurs may actually have served in uniform for 10 or 15 years, but fundamentally is building a product that is trying to serve multiple customers rather than just working on the requirements that you gave them, right? And that distinction, I don't think, is always fully appreciated, if I can be kind, in the Defense Department, between what commercial really means and what venture-backed commercial companies really look like, because they have the talent density, the product velocity. They are designed to scale rather than just fulfill requirements.
It's almost like, it's a Spider-Man meme where they actually did the live one in the movie, right? Where all Spider-Men are just pointing at each other. I feel like when a PEO is like shrieking into the wind about a prime, it's just that Spider-Man meme, because the primes are the PEOs are the primes. So like there's a behavioral aspect in there too of, when we talk about how do we change behaviors at the PEOs, right? Is that like the big five, big seven, and it's some type of DIB mandates in there to change those behaviors? Or is that I think the government, like in the chair, active duty government civilian, needs to change? Or do you not see a delineation between the two? That's one I always sort of toy on, is where would I actually try to put pressure on an incentive model?
Yeah, I think I would focus on how do we create different incentives, and the system that we have built does not incent the right kind of market scouting and trying of innovative technology, because the system doesn't feel like it's truly under threat. So the Ukrainians feel a pretty existential threat, and aren't going to sit there and debate the bureaucracy. They're going to find a way to try and buy the stuff that is going to save their ass today.
Yeah.
Right. And so it is not an academic exercise. And I say this with full respect and love of our acquisition workforce, which I think have been constrained and micromanaged in certain ways and have grown up in certain ways. So, they are great Americans, but they also, what they see and what they've been trained on, and the level of urgency, all those kinds of things get you to a point of view where it's easier to give the requirements to the existing companies that they know and have grown up with and have a set of rules about how to interact with, rather than new entrants that may provide a different solution, a lower cost solution, a solution that ultimately may scale in a very different way.
It's interesting when you talk about sort of the existential nature, or the existentialism sort of innovation, right? And that perceived threat, that perceived sort of like existential threat vulnerability drives speed and sort of a risk threshold.